You don't have to raise your hand.
That's
Charlie. Go.
I learned something I've used through the rest of my life, but sparingly, and that's how to be big. Big. You have to be big here. Otherwise, you just get swallowed up. You get swallowed up by the crowd. You get swallowed up by everybody else on stage. You had to be big, really big.
And you had to be able to answer them back.
Mm-hmm.
You can't answer them back,
know an audience.
Got to know an audience. We always said, be big because you can always make it smaller.
That's
Make it
right.
smaller,
Yeah,
you
exactly.
have nothing to work with.
If I had $1 for every time I've heard that.
And you had to live in
that
the,
if
in
you
the
could
moment.
do melodrama and vaudeville well, you could do anything.
That's right.
Anything.
You have multiple characters you do.
Yes.
That's what's so fascinating, that the other theaters in this town always were putting us down because, oh, it's not real acting or anything else. But when they did call on us to go to their theater and work, we were the usually ones that shine.
Or anytime one of those guys vapor locked on stage, it was one of us that bailed.
It's a good ad-lib. Yeah, we're not ad-lib.
As a matter of fact,
We
one
do the
time
ad-libs.
when we were connected with Civic Theater, people said to me, when are you going to leave that joke out there and come back to real theater? And we went to do Plaza Suite. And we remember people saying, I can't believe you hired 2 people from Pollardville to do all 3 characters. And we were scared to death.
Sure.
And the next day, when the paper came out, Helen Flynn, our local critic, wrote it and said, Pollardville Pair takes Civic Theater by storm. That's said a lot for learning out here.
This we could do multiple characters.
Working in situations that we were in here gives you, if you can handle it and you know it, it gives you a sense of confidence that you carry all the way out that door and through your life.
Right. And in my experience, when I first went to Stockton Civic Theater, it was to do Oklahoma, and I pulled a Willie for the first time.
Well, you
for the
also
first
got
show.
Biloxi Blues, you got nominated.
I got
for that.
nominated again for Biloxi Blues, for supporting.
But we also got Ellie's too.
One thing that really helped us here is that when we started, a lot of us didn't know too much about melodrama and vaudeville. But the people who started the theater, and when Laverne Balk and Blossom were here, and they had been around in vaudeville, they taught us a lot, because I remember Blossom sitting back to me, and when I was doing a Jolson impersonation, and she said, he didn't quite do it that way, you ought to do it this way. So we had a lot of help.
You know, I think, I was thinking this morning that with the exception of Barbara Valenti, who you weren't able to get hold of, and me, there's nobody left alive who knows how this whole thing started and where it started.
Well, Doug Curley's in San Diego. He was a newscaster and he retired in San Diego. Because my mother used to watch him, and she saw him one day out at Balboa Hospital, and she said, "Oh, Doug, I watch you every day." And he said, "Oh, you're the one."
Well,
that's another thing that's so fascinating is not only Doug Curley, but Grant Lee Phillips and these others that sprang up from here. So this was not a little nothing of nowhere thing. There was actual people that popped up and became stars.
And our own Kim Luke over here.
One thing I think was good, what was special about this theater is you don't have to stick to the script, which gives you
Mary, we were supposed to stick to the script.
You know how to hurt a director.
Hey, you know what? And an addendum to that, I learned very quickly that the best way to make it on stage here was to not only know all of my lines, but everyone else's.
That was really important because Monica Dale, she knew everybody's lines and knew hers perfect. And when I would be on stage with my dear wife, I had a habit of forgetting lines, and I could look at her and say, "What's my next line?" She could feed it right to me. It was perfect. We were doing a love scene in Plaza Suite on a settee, and I'm making love to her like this, and I can't remember my next line, and I'm saying, "Hurry up, leave the line." She would do that, so she knew.
But you didn't have to tell me to feed you the line. I knew you didn't know it.
There was one night in
Scourge?
Scourge of Scrubby Vermin. And it was Bob's first night on as Sheriff Jackass, taking over for Scott Dunn's. And is after Scrubby has become Frankie the Ghost, and Bob is wondering what he's supposed to do, and Tim Koenig and I are on stage with him, and he goes, well, what am I supposed to do? I can't go shooting no spook. And Joel stands up and says, amen, brother. And I lost my line, and I went, and I left the stage.
And me and Tim are waiting, so they hit da 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 da.
Well, before that, before I went off, I turned to Bob and I said, what's my line? He goes, you're asking me? It's my first night here.
I don't even know my line.
And then when I left, Bob went to the pit and said, a little soft shoe. We're going to be here a few minutes.
But you know, a lot of new
and then he
things.
come back out and he goes,
Yep, yeah, well, you
And walk
Steve
back
Mayer goes,
off.
dun, 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 and off I went.
Well, hey, when he went off, he was, what's my line? What's my line?